Okay, so hello friends. I'm really falling into this niche, to be completely honest with you. It is May 2nd, which means we do kind of have to dive into all the books I read in April, but it's late, but better late than never. I didn't know if I was going to do it because I was like, it's a lot of work. It's really not. I have the books here. Like, I don't know why I thought we would go through all of the books that I read in April, which I think was 9 or 10 or whatever. There's a couple of them that I don't have physically that I have on my Kindle, but the first book, like, we're just gonna get straight into it. Sorry that it's kind of loud. I live on a main street. It's not the cutest thing in the world. So, the first book that I read beginning of April was Light Lark. Technically I didn't fully read it. I did, but I didn't. I got halfway through and then I decided to get the audiobook and I read it through audiobook. My review, essentially, I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was actually, like, fairly good, to be honest with you. It's definitely YA, like, if anything else. Like, it's really good. I gave it 3.5 stars just simply because I was like, I don't really know how to feel about it. Didn't really do much for me, but it was a good, cute little story. I know a lot of people have kind of had mixed reviews with it, to be honest. Looking back, I probably would have given it a 3-star read in comparison to other things that I read this month, but it definitely hit that need to continue reading this month, definitely. And I really hit a bump in the road and I read Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I didn't finish it. That was a DNF 100%. Said on my Goodreads that I got more than 60% into it, but I skipped through a lot of the book to technically finish it. It was really, like, giving Wendy being sassy. Great, love that. And then the way that she was spoken about in Hook's perspective, I could not. It was giving 12-year-old Wattpad. When I say 12-year-old writing, especially when it comes to, like, the spice or how a guy is going to speak about a woman, you can definitely tell it's someone that doesn't have the practice in the real world to understand that a lot of men don't talk like that. Or someone that's in their mid-20s, if a man ever described me like that or ever talked to me like that, it's a no for me. So overall rating for it is like a 3.8, which is very weird. The tandem read of Perspectives was nice, but the language was just, like, not good. And then I read 2 books at the same time, roughly. I listened to the audiobook of the second Light Lark book, so I read Nightbane. No, I gave it the same rating. I gave it a 3.5. I didn't have a big problem with the second book. A lot of people had a lot of issues with the second book, although it still has, like, a pretty decently high rating. I would say, honestly, it was maybe even just a little bit better than the first one, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, but I also gave it a low rating because I did read it on, like, I did have it playing while I was at work, and I just did not like the voice actor. She was making all the men sound like they were old. If there's a third book in the series, I probably won't end up reading it, to be honest. It just wasn't my cup of tea. And then at the same time, I read, literally within a day, and this is how fast I read, honestly, is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Now, this has a 4-star rating on Goodreads, and it's, like, fantasy, and a lot of people gave, like, really nasty reviews about it. They were like, the writing's good, but it's really giving, like, Wattpad werewolf trope. Here's the thing. If anyone has ever read Kelly Armstrong, which is a Canadian author who wrote the Bitten series, they are so amazing for adult, like, werewolf fantasy tropes. Like, and you can definitely tell that a lot of people probably didn't read her books, but this is definitely like a YA version of the Bitten series. The spice is not that bad, and, like, the language isn't that bad. Like, it's very well written. I finished it in a day. I loved it. It gave me what I wanted. Definitely gonna pick up the second book when it gets here. I'm actually quite excited for this series. I loved it. I gave it a 4.5. Definitely gave what it needed to give. So I read that in one day, probably within like one sitting, to be honest with you. But I read The Familiar. Now I got the spray painted edges of this book. I did not read Babel, or The Ninth House, to be honest, or Hellbent. I'm not really the biggest, like, I'm into dystopian. I'm not really into like historical fantasy. I gave it a 3. Yeah, I gave it a 3-star. It took me a while to read this. So I read this at the beginning of April. It took me pretty much 2 weeks to finally like fully get into it. I was also in the process of moving out, so that did not help. But I finished it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't really like it either. It just wasn't really my cup of tea. I felt like there was things missing in it. Like, I feel like there should have been more magic. Like, I feel like it just was not giving on that aspect. I'm glad that I got it. I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that I realized that historical fiction is not really where I'm at. I can see why people like it. And then I got into my romance phase. And when I tell you, I did not think that I was a romance girly. And I picked this up. I've had this for so long. I'm not really in the fantasy mood, and none of the other books that I had on my shelf really were speaking to me. And I needed a book that would probably be something that I could probably put down. I couldn't put this down. I can definitely tell it's YA, but I really like YA romances. I'm definitely on the same side as Haley Pham with it. I feel like there's more depth to YA romances. I loved this. I did only give it 5 stars. The last little bit of it was just kind of like, okay. But I liked the depth of this. I like the storyline for this. It definitely is a 5-star for me. Definitely got me into my romance phase. I was waiting for my car one day. I walked, like, my oil was getting changed. I walked all the way down to like a Starbucks early in the morning and read, and I finished this entire book all before noon. All that to say, I didn't actually like it that much. It definitely was something that I was able to like put down for a second, digest what was being said to me, and then continue reading. The storyline just didn't seem to really build all that much, to be honest with you. It just kept going on the same way. But I definitely bought this book without really understanding what it was about. I did give it a 3.75 star. I said it was easy to understand. But it wasn't I just said it wasn't my favorite storyline, and I feel like we should have gotten more of Caspian, to be honest with you. The trope with Alexander made 0 sense. There was no build to it. Like, it just was not good. So I probably won't pick up. I don't know if this seems like it should have a sequel or not. I can't remember. But if there is, I probably won't pick it up. At that same time, I did start Empire of the Damned. I do have this book, and if you were watching my reading vlog, which is probably going to come out after this video does, I did pick up Empire of the Damned. This is something I am still currently reading. I'm like still only 21% into it. I've just stopped reading it. It's definitely not an easily digestible book. It's good, but it's definitely something that it's like you have to be in the mood to read it. We'll move on to this, which is not in order of my Goodreads. However, I did read this first. So we have Heartless Hunter. It is a book of the month book. Technically it was a book of the month for February, but I got it for my April box because I was like, there's really nothing else that I really want to read. Kind of regretting that. Should have gotten the Lynn Painter book, but I digress. Book of the month. This is not sponsored whatsoever, clearly, but their customer service is amazing. So this book, there's a binding issue I don't know if you guys can tell, but the pages in the first like little bit of the book were slowly like, they were easily pullable when I was like flipping the page. And a couple of the pages came loose, and it just, like, there's just a gaping hole without glue. And so there was just a bit of a binding issue, and I don't have a problem with it. I was finishing it when I emailed them anyway, and was just like, hey, just giving you a heads up just in case other people have the same issue. I think it's just a binding issue with the batch. So just heads up, and they're sending me a replacement. Their customer service is amazing. I read, again, this was a book, I did start it one day and then finish it another, but I essentially did read this book. Like, I got 63 pages in the first time I started reading it, and I started reading it the night before I started my reading vlog. This is the first book that I picked up. I finished it the same day, like not even a couple of hours later. It's not that long of a book, like it's just a little bit over 400 pages, but honestly, it gave it a 4-star. I think I was gonna give it like a 4.75 star. It delivered what I needed. I will definitely be looking out for the second book in this series. We got to the last couple of chapters and it kind of got a little bit boring, but not enough that I wouldn't pick up the second book in this series when it comes out. I read, funny story, and this is when I learned that I actually do have a thing for romance books. This was so good, and I couldn't put it down, and quite literally, I don't know if I have a clip of it, but quite literally, I finished this book, closed it, and hugged it for like 5 minutes, and was just in a great mood after reading it. And I did give this book 6 stars. The very first of the year, honestly. I really loved this book. Emily Henry writes so well, but the spice level is not that bad. It's definitely like the door is slightly ajar. And then to finish off the books that I actually like wanted to read, in a way, like my brain was like, we're gonna read it because it's just where we are. I read Divine Rivals, which again is also in this reading vlog. I did finish it yesterday. Honestly, I didn't actually like it. I gave it 3.5 stars, and essentially said it was good until the last 100 pages, and then it just was boring. I do like the style. I don't even know what to describe as missing. I just feel like something is missing. To end this TBR off, this doesn't have a rating. I probably won't fully read it. I did put it in my 2-star reads, but I just had a hyperfixation to pick it up and read it. It's kind of a classic. I kind of hate myself for getting it, but I did buy Brave New World. I don't really know how to like fully describe it. It's essentially like test tube babies and how that has bettered society, but there really isn't much to this book. I don't really have much to say about it. I just bought it out of a necessity to get my brain to stop thinking about it, and I am upset at myself for reading it again, but I wasn't forced to read it this time, so, and I actually, because I'm in university now, I actually understood it. I didn't agree with it, but I understood it. That is it for my April reads. This is the niche that I've decided to join, I guess, and I'll see you guys on a different day when I upload another video, so bye!